Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Net's program where we talk to writers and reporters and editors, and I underscore that for this evening, and all different people who are putting stuff out in the Bronx. And in our second segment, we usually talk to photographers or filmmakers or artists, and I underscore that. There's going to be a beautiful exhibit at the Bronx River Arts Center. We're going to meet some of the artists who have put that together. But to start our program, let us welcome the editor in chief from the Bronx Times and say good evening to Christian Falcone. Nice to have you with us, Chris.
Good to be with you, Gary. Thanks for having me.
You are, I don't want to say Johnny come lately, but many of us have been reading the Bronx Times for years. I have my copy. It's well dog-eared, and I've got my little address on there. And because I read it anxiously and aggressively every week, because there's always interesting stuff. A little background about you. Let's meet the editor-in-chief of the relatively new editor-in-chief of the Bronx Times. A little bit about your background, where you're from, when did you get into journalism? Let's talk.
Sure. So I'm originally from Yonkers. Graduated from Hofstra University with a print journalism degree. Spent the bulk of my career in Westchester, managing a chain of weekly newspapers in the southern Westchester area for about 15 years or so. Always was interested in investigative journalism, hard news, things of that nature. And then last summer, around May, June, I had decided it was time for change. Was looking to do something a little different. The position I was at the company had sort of stagnated. So through a mutual acquaintance, one of the members of Schnepp's Media, which is the parent company of the Bronx Times, reached out to me, and we started to have some conversations, and they went well. They really liked what I was interested in, some of the ideas I had for the Bronx Times, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, one thing led to another.
Yeah,
Before we even talk more specifically about the paper, I'm always curious in this for an artist's muse. What is it that got you into journalism? And you say, well, you like the idea of hard news and investigative news. Can you describe what it was that motivated you to say, this is what I want to
I had no idea, to be honest with you.
do?
No,
Bad question. All
yeah,
right.
I spent some time, moving furniture when I was younger, recognizing what a hard day's work was like. Knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. On a whim, I took a writing class. I always had been pretty decent at creative writing, and it started to flow. Really got into it. Did a lot of good work in college. And just fell in love with it. Really fell in love with the ability and the impact of your writing to make a change and have a difference.
That you could really make a difference. Boy, I mean, I don't write for a living, but I do this for a living, and I can understand that. Let's talk a little bit. I mean, it's always interesting when we have reporters or writers who come from really elsewhere, like, Illinois or something. But what is the difference between, let's say, covering the Bronx or covering Westchester? And I guess in that question, I just want to define further who we are and what is it about the Bronx. It certainly makes it captivating for me, and I assume you're kind of enjoying your stay here, your work here as well.
It's been great. I would say the biggest difference between the Bronx and New York City news compared to Westchester is the pace. There's such a pace. There's always something going on. So you've got to be able to keep up with it, and people are always watching. No matter what it is, people are always aware of what you're doing. So it's a challenge. When you have limited resources, if you have a limited size staff, trying to be able to effectively cover everything that happens in the borough, which in many cases is not reported on by the bigger papers, right? I mean,
You're preaching to the choir, my man.
yeah,
You know what I do for a living. I'm telling you, it's true.
sort of the forgotten borough, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that since I've taken over. So that's what we do. We try to shine a light and spotlight positive things, but also inequalities. Things people need to be held accountable. We make sure we shine a light on that as well.
Yeah. I have said this. In fact, I was at a veterans breakfast, the Bronx Veterans Breakfast this morning. We're recording this on Monday. Um, and I mentioned, which I've mentioned a million times, it's the Bronx is like undiscovered territory. We've got 1.4 million people, and nobody knows what's going on here. And those of us who are blessed with the opportunity to cover it and report on it, you uncover stuff that nobody knew about, that nobody knows about, and I'm assuming you get some of that joy as well. And when you say, wow, we have somebody who just wrote a book, or the original actor from, Sonia Manzano who was on Sesame Street or something like that. And that's the kind of thing that I think people in the Bronx really begin to appreciate, because it creates identity, right?
There's a tremendous amount of history and culture in the borough, right? And I think a lot of that has gotten lost over the years and the decades. I think what has happened is the daily newspapers have focused on the negative, the crime, and the inequalities and things of that nature. But there is a tremendous amount of good that happens. There are a lot of things to spotlight, and I think the passion for us as a group is what we see is sometimes when we cover a story and we're beginning to see the daily newspapers pick up some of those stories. That's gratifying because we know that they're reading our work, and they're getting their news of the borough of the Bronx, from the Bronx Times.
Let's talk a little bit about the paper and the content of the paper. Yeah, as I said, and you know this, that I've been reading the paper enthusiastically for, as long as I've been working in the Bronx, which is a number of years. I think, number one, it's never been better. It's never been more informative. Um, and you also, it's been harder hitting. The paper rarely did controversial subjects or investigative subjects. You have a really wonderful stable of writers. I mean, Robbie, Aaliyah, Jason, they're just absolutely excellent. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about, doing that kind of stuff, and developing that, and developing your staff. Talk to me about your point of view on that.
Well, it's interesting because when I took over the position, one of the things I had to do right away was hire a reporter. So when I sat down to interview candidates, I interviewed Robbie was one of the first people I interviewed.
Robbie Sequeira, for people
Robbie
who don't know.
Peguero,
Yeah.
correct. And we really chatted a lot about what I was looking to do with the paper, which I perceived to be different than what the paper had done historically. And he completely bought in. We had a similar vision, and from day one, we've executed on that. It was a matter of, I think traditionally weekly newspapers, they're often referred to as sort of community scrapbooks. And when I say that,
That's not what this is, ladies and gentlemen.
right, right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weekly newspapers who their goal is to put as many photos in the paper so parents can see their kids in the paper. Now that has a place.
And the Bronx Times does that and has
Right,
done that,
right.
but go ahead, finish the sentence.
There's a place for it, but there's also a place for real hard hitting news. And since we came aboard and I took over, we have not shied away from the controversy. We covered a very controversial alleged rape at Fordham University. We covered through the Child Victims Act a lawsuit against Louis Gigante, who was a priest in, I believe, the
Right.
70s. And credit to the people that I work with at the Bronx Times, Laura Guerrero. She has supported me in my endeavors. She's been, she's allowed me to do what I wanted to do, and that was to really kind of delve into the hard issues and not be afraid to hold elected officials accountable, or tackle controversial topics. And we continue to do it.
I talk about this with people all the time. 1.4 million people, and look at the range of media: News 12, BronxNet, the Riverdale Press, the Bronx Times, the Norwood News. And then look at 600,000 people who populate Boston, and they have network television, they have daily newspapers. And I have to say, for the first time, In all in my, more than almost 3 decades of covering the Bronx, when I open up the Bronx Times, I get the feeling that somebody's really covering all of it. And, listen, I'm pretty well in touch with what's going on, but you guys are uncovering stuff that's out there that hasn't, that I'm not aware of and the other people aren't aware of, and they're always eye-opening, for us. So, congratulations to you and to, the other people, that you work on. Do you do any like, I haven't seen a byline from you. Now, maybe you do some writing. Do you do any writing? Are you planning to do any writing? Are you thinking about doing, some kind of investigative thing, or I don't know,
Yeah,
just asking.
it's a great question, Gary. I started my career as a beat reporter, so I still have a passion for that. I think what happens when you take over the position as an editor, a lot of times you get bogged down and so tied up that you don't really have the luxury of time needed to write. So, my answer to you is yes, I'd love to write. I'd like to get back to it at some point. I just don't have enough time because of
Wow.
everything we're trying to do right now. So hopefully you'll see my byline in the future.
All
That
right, we'll find out. So here's the follow-up to that question. What would you write about? I mean, I realize maybe there's an investigative story that we don't know about yet, but what would be your passion? What really drives you? Or, like, what kind of thing would you like to write about would be interesting to you personally? I think that's interesting.
it's really the investigative type stuff, which obviously takes time. You
Yeah.
have to develop sources. The most important thing is the sources and the contacts you're able to develop. And I'm still in the infancy stages of developing sources and contacts in the Bronx. But it would be investigative type stuff, and I monitor everything we cover, obviously. So I'm starting to kind of connect the dots and see where things go, and hopefully at some point I will be able to kind of
All
turn
right. Well,
something.
I will keep looking, and I'll put a check mark when I see. I was go, oh wow, he did a story there. Just to wrap it up, let's see. It's bxtimes.com, and that's the other challenge which editors like you never had in the past, because you're actually managing more than one media. It's not just the piece of paper. I happen to like to read it off the paper, but I get the email. I guess every day I get an email of the stories, so that keeps you busy. Right? I mean, because it, unlike saying, okay, we have this and we'll edit it for tomorrow, we'll get it for the next day, and then it goes into the paper on Thursday. Now all of a sudden we got to have something out there every day, right? It's a challenge.
Absolutely.
We only
Traditionally,
have a few seconds left, so go ahead,
sure.
wrap it up.
Traditionally, the way weekly newspapers worked was you put the paper out the next day, you put everything on the website. We operate on a daily basis now, and
All right.
credit to my digital editor, Aaliyah Schneider. She's been instrumental in moving forward news on a real time daily
Great.
basis.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, he's the editor in chief of the Bronx Times. I'm glad we finally got to see him and we got to hear what he has to say. But the best part about this segment is that it's over and Chris has to get back to work serving us, because I'm going to read the paper next week and I'm going to look forward to what's in there. The one thing I didn't mention, you won awards, right? I'm going to extend
Yes.
this segment for about 30 seconds. Tell us what awards you won.
New York Press Association, the annual convention. As a group, we won 7 awards, 5 of them for editorial prowess. I was really proud of my guys for that.
Wow.
Obviously, as you know, many of which only came in, halfway through the year or later. Really good work on the
Great.
education front, a series on marijuana, a retrospective on Ruben Diaz's tenure. Really good writing. So I'd
Great.
advise everybody to take a look.
Congratulations. We'll read the paper and we'll read all about it. You deserve the opportunity to boast. Christian Falcone, editor in chief of the Bronx Times. Thank you for joining us. We will be right back, and we're going to do this really fun and interesting artist segment right after this.